About 6 years ago, I had just become a new mom. Life was hectic, balancing a newborn, a job trying to stay on top of my health. It was a lot. So naturally, my social life had kind of shifted to being online. Facebook and Instagram were really the only ways I kept in touch with friends at that point. One day, I got a friend request from someone named Steven. Same name as an old high school friend, and we had a few mutuals, so I didn't think much of it and accepted. At first, everything seemed totally normal. He messaged me a few times, made small talk, and just seemed like your average, awkward guy trying to reconnect. But after a few conversations, I realized something was off. This wasn't the Steven I went to high school with. He had the same name, but that was about it. His profile picture didn't show his face, and I figured I'd just made a mistake. Still, he wasn't acting creepy, just kind of weird and overly chatty, so I didn't bother unfriending him. I kept the responses short. Nothing personal. Just casual internet acquaintance stuff. Then one day, out of nowhere, I got a text from him that stopped me cold. I never gave him my number. When I asked how he got it, he said he'd found it on my art website. Fair enough, I did have my contact info listed for commissions. But that's when things started to get uncomfortable. He started texting all the time. I'd reply politely, but kept it surface level, always ending the conversation with a quick excuse, busy with work dinner, with the family, that kind of thing. Then he started talking about his boyfriend, called himself one of the few gay conservatives. At first I thought, okay, interesting, but whatever makes you happy. I wished them well, tried to be nice. But after that, things escalated quickly. The political talk got intense, aggressive. I told him flat out, I didn't want to go there, that I was liberal. And I didn't think our conversations would go well if we kept heading in that direction. He ignored that completely. Soon after, his messages turned sexual. He started talking about sex parties he and his boyfriend threw, asked if I wanted the details. I told him flatly that it was inappropriate, that we weren't close, and I wasn't interested. Then, one afternoon, I stepped away from my phone for a couple of hours, just busy with work, and came back to dozens of messages from him. He was furious I hadn't responded. Most of them were graphic descriptions of sex acts. It was completely unhinged. I finally snapped. I told him I'd only been polite because he seemed lonely, but this was beyond the line. I told him straight up. I didn't believe he was gay, that I thought he was just saying that to come off as harmless. Then I blocked him. On everything socials, phone number, email, the works. But it didn't end there. Over the next few days, I started getting flooded with friend requests from random accounts. No mutual friends, no photos, just fake-looking pages. I knew it was him. Then came the text messages and phone calls from weird unlisted numbers. I kept blocking and moving on over and over. He started messaging my friends, my family, even other women in my dance troupe, just sending out friend requests to anyone connected to me. I warned everyone to block and report him. Then one day, my phone started blowing up. My art page on Facebook was being spammed graphic porn posts, comments calling me a thief, and worse. There were at least 15 accounts doing it all at once. And then, in the middle of the chaos, I saw a comment posted under his real account. He must have slipped and used the wrong one. He even sent a message to my art page saying, "Sorry, I just missed my friend. I was trying to get your attention." That's when I called the cops. But of course, nothing came of it. Harassment laws are a joke unless someone physically shows up at your door, which that night someone did. Around 2 a.m, I woke up. I wasn't sure why it wasn't a nightmare or anything. I just couldn't sleep. I got up, started scrolling my phone, and then I heard it. A weird noise coming from the living room. Faint cracking, maybe scratching. We lived in a big ranch-style house at the time, and the living room was all the way at the other end of the hall. I figured it was one of the cats messing with something, maybe chasing a mouse. I got up, walked down the hall, and flipped on the light. The noise stopped. I looked around for the cats, but then I noticed one of our big windows, floor to ceiling, was cracked open. Just a few inches, but definitely open. The lock was broken. There were pry marks around the top edge. The window only opened from the top, and it was old and stiff. It didn't give easily. Whoever it was had only managed to get it about 8 inches open, but it was enough to rattle me. I ran back to the bedroom, woke up. My husband grabbed our son and called the police again. They couldn't prove it was him. No camera footage, no fingerprints. But come on, he had just gone nuclear online hours earlier. It was too much of a coincidence. The police ended up speaking to him. After that, everything stopped. Maybe it scared him enough. Maybe he moved on to someone else. I don't know. But the rabbit hole didn't stop there. I started digging, trying to figure out who he really was. I eventually found his YouTube channel, and it was exactly the nightmare I feared. Angry political rants, escalating to the point he'd be red-faced, spitting mad, showing off his gun collection, and talking about violence. That's when I found his real last name. And with that, a criminal record. He'd been arrested 2 years prior for holding a woman against her will in a hotel room and trying to assault her. Thankfully, she got away with just a bloody lip. We moved soon after, left the farm, found a place with neighbors nearby. I scrubbed all my contact info from the internet, locked everything down. I still use a baby monitor in my son's room to this day, not for him, but for me, just in case someone ever tries to come through the window again. His YouTube channel was eventually taken down, and I haven't heard from him since. But I still think about him more often than I'd like to admit. I've had my fair share of strange encounters, being a young gay guy in a pretty crowded city, especially when it comes to apps like Grindr. If you've ever used it, you know how weird things can get. But this one encounter stands out as probably the creepiest experience I've ever had. And honestly, it still freaks me out when I think about it. This all started when I was living in a decent-sized city in northern Florida. I'd already planned to move away the following week, and 2 of my friends had come down to help me celebrate both my move and one of their birthdays. We spent a day in my city and then road trip down to Miami for a few days of fun. Everything was great until the last day of that trip. We were at brunch, soaking in the last bit of Miami before heading back home so I could pack up and start fresh in a new place. That's when I got a notification from Grindr. Just a simple message that said, "Hi." It came from a blank profile. No picture, which isn't that unusual on Grindr. A lot of guys stay anonymous for privacy reasons, so I didn't think much of it. He said he was using the Explore feature, which meant he wasn't local to Miami. We started chatting casually, name interests, that kind of thing. Eventually, he sent a few pictures of himself. And not gonna lie, he was pretty attractive. Then he asked for my number. I was distracted by everything going on, my friends, the goodbye vibes Miami, and I just gave it to him without thinking. That was mistake number 1. Over the next few days, we texted pretty regularly. It all seemed normal, just small talk about life goals, careers. Then, I got a notification from Cash App. I had just received $100 from someone I didn't know. The memo, just an eggplant emoji. I texted my friends, half joking about how some random person had accidentally sent me money. I figured he'd have to keep sending more just to contact me again, since Cash App only lets you message someone if there's a payment involved. We laughed about it. I was actually planning to return the money because if it was a real mistake, I'd feel bad keeping it. But before I could send it back, I got a text from the Grindr guy. He said, "Don't ask me for more. That's all I can give. I'll block you if you ask again." That completely threw me off. I never asked for a dime. I didn't even know how he found my Cash App, especially since I hadn't linked my number to it yet. I asked how he got my info, but he never answered. I guess I brushed it off at the time because, well, free money. Dumb, I know. Then things started getting weirder. He began asking me for pictures of my feet. Not that the request itself was bizarre, but the way he went about it felt unsettling. His tone had changed, like I wasn't talking to the same person anymore. I told him he was making me uncomfortable and needed to back off. He agreed, sort of. A little later, he suggested I move back to Florida, his city specifically, so he could take care of me. I said no firmly. His response, "Then I'll come to you." That's when I started to feel real panic. I asked him how he knew where I lived. He dodged the question. That's what scared me the most. I had never given him my location, never posted anything about my move, and I always kept my Grindr location turned off. There was absolutely no way he should have known anything about my new city. I told him I didn't want to talk to him anymore, but I didn't block him. At that point, I felt like I needed to keep a record of everything just in case. Sure enough, things escalated. He sent me real pictures of himself and apologized for lying about who he was, but the images were disturbing. Close-ups of his face with this huge manic smile and wide, unblinking eyes. His skin looked grayish. His beard was unkempt, like he hadn't taken care of himself in ages. One picture in particular made my skin crawl. It looked like an accidental shot, just him glaring at the camera, with pure hatred in his eyes. Another was a close-up of just his mouth grinning. Nothing else in frame. He sent pictures of his apartment too. Bare walls, a random fire hydrant inside, a small table with a photo of strangers on it. It was all just off. I didn't respond. That's when the angry texts started. He went from calling me horrible names and threatening me to apologize and begging me to talk to him again, all within minutes. It was like watching someone unravel in real time. He sent me a link to his YouTube channel. I actually checked it out. Over 10 videos. Just him talking to himself. No views. Just rambling. Laughing at his own jokes. But the creepiest part, between sentences, you could hear something faint in the background. Muffled screaming. And sometimes after that, this high-pitched, inhuman laugh would come out of him. Like something out of a horror movie. I swear, it didn't even sound like the same guy. He eventually deleted most of the videos. At one point, he sent me a link to his poetry blog. The poems were surprisingly well written, but they made no sense. They felt like riddles, or gibberish, like something a person would write during a psychotic break. He kept sending me small amounts of money, just to get my attention. Then came the endless string of texts, every few minutes. Here are some of them. "Did you block me, you little F********? You want to put me out of your life?" That's fine, but it's irreversible. You're not getting rid of me. I'm the best thing that's happened to you in years. It's a privilege to know me, and I'm sparing you the really vulgar, explicit stuff. He would even reply to his own messages, apologizing for the things he said, then asking me not to leave. I finally told one of my best friends about it. Another gay guy, protective. Honestly, kind of a tank. He got furious, grabbed my phone, and called the guy. Told him he was my boyfriend, that he needed to back off. The guy didn't say anything at first. Then, out of nowhere, he started laughing. Loud, hysterical, animalistic laughing. Then came this disturbing, incoherent babble. Real words, strung together in a way that made no sense. My friend just stared at me, stunned. He's not easily scared, but that call shook him. Afterward, the guy texted me more disturbing messages, flipping between rage and apologies, until he finally sent this one. The private Facebook messages you may see were all written before our conversation via text and phone tonight. So naturally disregard them. And my name. You. I never figured out what that meant. I checked Facebook and didn't see anything. But that was the final straw. I blocked him everywhere. I thought it was over until about 2 weeks ago. I was out exploring a nearby city with that same friend. As we were leaving a museum, I noticed someone standing near the stairs, just leaning against a cement wall, staring. I didn't get a good look, but something about him felt familiar. It wasn't until we got to lunch that it hit me. It was him. I'm sure of it. Somehow, he had found me, traveled over 1,000 miles to my area. I still don't know how. I didn't tell my friend then, because I didn't want to scare him, but I think I need to, soon. Thankfully, I'm moving again in a few weeks, this time much farther away, and yeah, I'm seriously thinking about going to the police with everything I've documented, because this whole thing, it's been the most unsettling, uncomfortable experience of my life. This happened when I was around 25 or 26, and it still sticks with me all these years later. At the time, I was working full-time as a researcher at a university. I wasn't a professor or anything, just someone quietly doing her job, blending in among all the students on campus. Most people probably assumed I was one of them, especially because of my age. And honestly, that was fine by me. Whenever the weather was nice, I liked to spend my lunch breaks outside. I'd find a quiet bench under a shady tree and just enjoy not being crammed into a lab for a while. One day, while I was out there, like usual, this guy, he looked like a student, came up and asked if he could sit next to me. I didn't want the company, but I didn't want to be rude either. So I just said, sure. He started up some light conversation. I kept my answers short, polite, but not too revealing. But then he said something that made me pause. He told me he'd noticed which department building I usually came out of. That caught me off guard. I'd never seen this guy before, but apparently he'd seen me more than once. I brushed it off, thinking maybe he just happened to be around the same places. He asked if I was a student, and I told him no, I worked there. He told me he was studying engineering. Then he asked if I'd go for coffee sometime. I turned him down, said I had a boyfriend, and that was that. Or so I thought. Maybe a week or two later, I was sitting somewhere else on campus during lunch, and who shows up again? Same guy. He sat down and started talking like we were old friends. And just like before, he asked me to go out for coffee. I told him again that I wasn't interested. He left without him making a scene, but I definitely felt uneasy this time. Then one day after work, I was walking to my car like I always did. I parked on the street a few blocks away to avoid the university's crazy parking fees, so it was a bit of a walk through mostly quiet, residential areas. Halfway there, I noticed someone walking on the opposite side of the street, just a few steps behind me. I didn't look directly at him. I didn't want him to know I'd noticed, but I felt my stomach drop. I turned and walked faster. So did he. That's when the panic kicked in. I sped up, breaking into a jog. He crossed to my side of the street and kept pace. I couldn't believe it. He was actually chasing me. I was maybe a minute from my car, but I knew there was one last busy road to cross, and traffic could be unpredictable. If I had to wait for a break, he'd catch up. But somehow, when I reached the road, there was a gap. I sprinted across and finally turned to yell, "Stop following me." And that's when I saw his face. It was the same engineering student. He shouted something back about wanting to talk, but I was done. I got to my car, locked the doors, and left as fast as I could. When I got home, I completely broke down. I was lucky nothing happened physically, but the fear, it stuck with me. After that, I started changing my route, walking with coworkers, even switching up where I parked. I became hyper-aware of everyone around me. Weeks passed, no sign of him. I slowly started to relax a little, though I still avoided eating outside. But one day, I went to the food court in the student center. It was packed, shoulder to shoulder. While I was standing in line, I heard someone calling out. I looked up, and there he was, waving, trying to push through the crowd toward me. I panicked. And for someone as shy as I am, I did the only thing I could think of. I made a scene. I yelled for him to leave me the hell alone. Everyone stopped and stared. His face dropped, and he just slunk away, disappearing into the crowd. I never saw him again after that. I still don't know his name. Never got a last name. Never reported him. There wasn't really much to report. But it shook me. And to this day, I'm still on alert when I'm walking alone. I still work at that university. And I still think about that guy sometimes. I just hope he didn't start doing that to someone else. This happened years ago, but it still messes with me. I don't think I've ever truly relaxed since it all went down. Sorry if this gets long, but to understand the whole thing, I've got to take you back to the beginning. It started the summer, right after I graduated high school. I was still living at home with my parents and my younger brother. One night, I was up late, packing for a camping trip with some friends. It was one of those brutally hot nights, so I had my bedroom window open to let some air in. I was just sitting there, folding clothes, not really thinking about much, when suddenly a hand reached through the window screen. I screamed and jumped back. The hand yanked away fast, and for a second, I honestly thought it might have been my brother messing around. But when I looked outside, there was a man just standing there, staring at me. I ran straight to my brother's room and found him on his computer, still gaming like nothing had happened. We called the cops, and they showed up pretty fast. They searched around the house, but didn't find anyone. They told us to lock everything up and left. My mom, though, she had this gut feeling the guy wasn't done. She ended up going outside and waiting on the back porch in the dark. Maybe 20 minutes later, she spotted someone creeping along the tree line at the edge of our yard. No fence on that side, unfortunately. He was wearing all black and moving from tree to tree, slowly making his way toward my window. When my mom shouted at him, he bolted. The police came back again, but just like before, he vanished. After that, I never opened that window again. My parents put up motion lights, and thankfully, things calmed down. Fast forward 6 months, I'd moved out and was living downtown with a friend. Our first apartment on our own. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. The only downside was that we had to park on the street, and spots near the building were rare. One night, I found my car had been broken into. Nothing was taken, but someone had left a single rose on the front seat. It was creepy, but I figured maybe it was just a weird prank or something. Then it happened again, and again. Almost every week, my car was broken into. Sometimes it was another flower. One time, a pair of men's underwear. Another time, a bag of Tootsie Rolls, my favorite candy. That's when I knew this wasn't random. Whoever it was, they knew me. Things escalated even more. Someone stole all my underwear from the laundry room in the basement of our building. A guy friend visited once his tires got slashed. Then came the letter. It wasn't a ransom note or a threat. It was worse. It was a love letter. Someone claiming they'd been in love with me for years, describing details of my life they could have only known by watching me closely. That was it. I started looking for a way out. A different friend let me take over their lease on the other side of the city. It was a much more secure building underground parking key fob access. I felt a lot safer there. For a while, everything was fine. Then my roommate, Ashley, got a new boyfriend. From the start, something about him felt off. His name was Matt. She said they met on MySpace. He was attractive, model-level good-looking, but just odd. Like his smile didn't reach his eyes. Conversations with him were weird too. He'd toss out random facts that had nothing to do with what we were talking about, just socially off. Still, Ashley was smitten. She'd never had a boyfriend before and thought he was the perfect guy. My friends and I tried to warn her, but she got defensive anytime we said anything about him. Eventually, Matt practically moved in. I tried to be out of the apartment as much as possible. Then one day, I came home and found him sitting alone in the living room. Ashley wasn't there. I went straight to my room, but about half an hour later, he knocked and asked if I wanted to hang out and watch a movie. Against my better judgment, I said, sure. We sat down to watch something, and I kept my eyes glued to the screen. At one point, I glanced over, and he was just staring at me, smiling. I asked, what? And he said, I just can't believe it. I asked what he meant, but he didn't say anything, just turned back to the screen, still smiling. I excused myself, locked my bedroom door, and stayed there for the rest of the night. Weeks passed. I barely spent any time at the apartment. Then one day, I came home and saw a big bouquet of flowers on a table with a card next to it. Something Matt had left for Ashley on their 6-month anniversary. On a whim, I opened the card and my blood ran cold. I didn't even have to read it to know the handwriting was identical to the stalker's letter I'd gotten months before. I still had the original, kept it for the police. I pulled it out and compared them side by side. It was the same person. Matt was my stalker. I called the police first. Then I called Ashley and asked her to come home. The cops actually met her at work and told her everything. She was devastated. Apparently, she called him and left a message before the police could stop her. And that was the last anyone ever heard from him. Everything he told Ashley had been a lie. No one by his name worked at the place he said he did. She'd never seen his apartment, never met a friend or family member. No one knew who this guy really was. After a couple days, Ashley and I decided to go through the stuff he'd left behind. There was a duffel bag that looked like it was full of gym clothes, but tucked away in a side pocket were about 10 photos of me. Most were taken from a distance, but one was of me sleeping in my own bed. There were also 2 pairs of my missing underwear. A necklace I hadn't even noticed was gone, and a Starbucks cup lid with my lipstick on it. All things he had stolen souvenirs. The police never found him. I ended up accepting an overseas opportunity I'd been considering and got out of there. Ashley and I drifted apart not long after. I think she had a hard time dealing with the fact that the first guy she ever loved was a total psycho. And to be honest, I think I held some resentment too. Not fair, but it was there. I don't know what Matt's plan was, whether he ever intended to hurt me or if he was just obsessed with being in my life somehow. Either way, the whole thing changed me. I still don't use my real name online. I still look over my shoulder, even in broad daylight. I got married, started a family, and moved on. But part of me always wonders if he'll come back. And that's a feeling I wouldn't wish on anyone.